Hello and welcome into another edition of the Sun Devil Source podcast, as always, presented by our good friends over at Jones Auto Centers. I'm your host, Jacob Brooks. Alongside me is our Sun Devil Source publisher, Chris Cartman. Chris, how's it going on this Wednesday night?
It's going well. It's been busy lately, right? Spring ball wrapping, transfer portal. Randy Bennett is cooking. And Landon Harrison doesn't stop hitting home runs,
Two of them tonight.
Yeah, he is now tied for second all time in a single season at ASU, too shy of the record, which was set back. I don't have it in front of me. I think it was 2001. So it's a 25-year record. That's probably going to fall here within the next couple of weeks. So everybody should be paying attention to that.
Yeah, like you alluded to, a lot of different things going on. Always this end of the school year time period, there's a lot of things going on, but it feels like now more than ever, there's so much to talk about with ASU athletics. We're going to have three major big topics to cover in this episode. We're going to kind of put a button on ASU's spring football period, give some brief overview of everything that went down on both sides of the ball over the last month or so with spring practices. Then we're going to talk about, as we're recording this right now, it's Wednesday night. Tomorrow is set to be the NFL draft day one. Then the draft will continue on into the weekend. ASU has some guys that are getting some looks from some NFL teams, and potentially some history could be made if things fall a certain way for ASU. And then also we've got to talk about ASU men's basketball is up to number 8 nationally in the transfer portal per 247 Sports. Randy Bennett has been making some moves. A lot to talk about, but Chris, first, we've got to start off with a lot more somber of a topic. We have to talk about the tragic passing from last week of ASU's assistant strength coach, Stephen Miller. He passed away very young. He had played offensive lineman for ASU back from 2015 to 2019. You knew him when he was a player. You knew him again when he was a coach. You had a lot of conversations with him, even leading up, just even days, weeks before his passing. What can you tell our viewers about what happened and how it affected the team?
Yeah, very sad and tragic. Steve was 29 years old, I believe, going to be 30 years old. And as you said there, I've known him. I'd known him from the time he was probably 17 years old when he committed to ASU, and we covered his commitment as a local player. And he had been back with the Sun Devils for a couple of years, working with the strength and conditioning staff most recently. And a couple of weeks ago, on a Tuesday, immediately after practice, I was having a conversation with him, just the two of us. And we're talking about just how good some of the new offensive linemen looked. And he was in a really positive, jovial spirits, and he always wore a smile and had an infectious, positive personality. And in the middle of a sentence, he had a medical emergency, and so we were with him for several minutes until the paramedics came. And by the time that he was in the ambulance, he had started to recover from the medical event that he had. I don't want to be specific on the nature of it at this time. It's a little bit sensitive still, but then a week later, he came back to practice. This was a week and a day ago, as we're recording this. And I spoke with him, and he shared some of the history. This had been something that had been affecting him for about 6 months, and he was working on trying to get it under control. And somebody that I know really well, who also knows Steve a little bit, had dealt with some similar things in the past. And so I was trying to connect the two of them in our last conversation. And he said that he'd be in touch with a friend of mine. And I was hopeful that would lead, or all of this would lead to, Steve being able to get through this situation. I definitely did not expect for him to die a day later. And it's a tragedy. Kenny Dillingham was a graduate assistant at ASU in 2015, which is when Steve Miller joined the Sun Devils. He had been involved in the recruitment, and I talked to some of the other coaches that had recruited Steve at the time, and whole thing is just extremely tragic, and I feel terrible. He had some family issues, and I'm not going to really get into that either, but he had a lot of people that really cared about him, loved him. The last memories that I really am going to have of Steve were we had an uncharacteristically hot March in early April, and Steve had a sponge that he would go and dunk into the water and try to keep the players cool. Like, he was always thinking about other people and how to best help people achieve the things that they wanted to in their life through football. And absolutely a gem of a person, and he's going to be missed.
Yeah, Chris, I really love that bit you added about him just trying to help the players stay hydrated, because it really hit the team hard. Thursday's practice last week was canceled. Players and coaches speaking about how much it affected them, because he really was just so loved by the team and the whole ASU football community. Our thoughts and prayers are with everybody who knew Steve, everybody whose life he touched. He touched so many people. We are really saddened by that news. And now, obviously, Chris, that really played into the end of spring football. I mean, you have the third to last practice being canceled, things being moved around. You have the maroon and gold scrimmage, which is supposed to be like this big showcase of who's been balling out during the spring. Let's put it all on the line in a big spring scrimmage, happening just days after his passing. And then the spring period ending yesterday, which is less than a week after his passing. Obviously, it affected things, but just looking at spring as a whole, who impressed you in that scrimmage? What were your overall big overarching takeaways from throughout the entirety of the spring period?
Yeah, I would say for how much that ASU lost from its starters and two deep overall, the team looked quite a bit better than I would have expected or would ordinarily be the case, right? And I've been covering ASU a long time, as people know, and that things have changed a lot in the transfer portal era. You never used to have as much talent and depth in a spring as we've seen in more recent years, when a lot of these winter transfer portal players come in and a lot more high school early enrollees make it onto campus. I think all of ASU's high school signees, except for two, were early enrollees. So there was like a whole bunch of them out there. Maybe around 15 or so or more, and then a whole bunch of transfers. And so I was just struck by how deep and how talented that they are at most positions on the field. And also, this is probably I would say almost assuredly, this is the biggest and most athletic team that Dillingham has had. So all of that stuff bodes extremely well for the overall direction of the program. Now, at the same time, it needs to be said that you need your star players to play really big time to be able to achieve the type of success that they've now established as the expectation in Tempe, right? And so are they going to be able to do that with a new quarterback replacing Sam Levitt, and with all of the all-conference caliber players that they lost littered across the roster, from Jordan Tyson, who's going to be a first-round draft pick, Maxi Honachor, Keith Abney, Keyshawn Elliott. We're going to talk about all those guys later in the podcast. And then a whole bunch of other guys who were all-conference level players. I think that is the question that remains to be determined. But the general sense out there in the college football community is that ASU is going to take a step back this year and not, probably challenge for the Big 12 championship or be as highly regarded as last season, right? They kind of snuck up on everybody in 2024. I think everybody knows that. And I
Yeah.
think this is a season in which they also might be able to really sneak up on people, given what I saw during spring football.
Now, Chris, before we start popcorning off different position groups, I just want to lay out a disclaimer, which is that we do member exclusive podcasts over on our Devil Sanctuary board on sundevilsource.com. If you subscribe over there, we do member exclusive podcasts. We have one from about a week ago where Chris was in depth breaking down how each position group had looked throughout the spring period. And there's going to be another one in literally like 2 or 3 days breaking down in a lot more detail than we're able to fit into this episode. Because like I mentioned in the intro, we have so much to talk about here today. So if you guys want more analysis on that, be sure to check out the member exclusive podcast that's already out. Then in a few days, the one that we're going to put out. But Chris, just really quickly going over the skill positions on offense, it feels like that has kind of been the talk of the town in spring, the 4-way battle for who will be the Sun Devils starting quarterback that both Kenny Dillingham and Marcus Arroyo said is going to go into the fall. It's not complete yet. It's still up in the air. Then at wide receiver, you had 3 of the top 25 wide receivers in the portal, 2 of the top 5 wide receivers in the portal, Omarion Miller and Reed Harris lighting up spring practices. You called Miller your MVP of the maroon and gold scrimmage. Then you look at tight end, you have a lot of turnover there, losing Shimon Mateer. Kamari Anderson was the only guy on the roster who seemed to have a moderately serious injury. He had that lower leg fracture and sprained ankle that he suffered in the maroon and gold scrimmage that could potentially hamper his fall camp a little bit. And then running back. Looks like there are 5 or 6 different guys who genuinely could have a shot to be in the 2 deep at running back. What have you made of the offensive skill positions so far this spring?
Yeah, I think you set that up really well. Quarterback, they did a very good job of avoiding turnovers, especially in the second half of spring. Scrimmages and other 11-on-11 segments that we saw, there were very few jeopardy balls for the relative inexperience of these players in this offensive scheme, right? Because Cam Dyer is the only one that had practiced in ASU's offense before spring ball. And even he was late because he had the ACL injury that sidelined him all the way until like bowl practices last year. So, you wouldn't expect these quarterbacks to have performed as well as they did, I think, in the spring, given those circumstances. Now, it's a little bit easier when you're throwing to Reed Harris and Omarion Miller, Raiden Vinesbury. That makes it easier for sure. Probably one of the reasons that Cutter Boley wanted to be at ASU was the idea that he could play with those guys, and I think he visited with 1 or 2 of them also at the time that he committed. But I would say Cutter Boley has the edge exiting spring ball. He has the experience of starting in the SEC under his belt. He was a little bit turnover prone. That's something that is going to ultimately, I think, determine whether or not he stays atop my list as the anticipated starter. But I think he'd make generally good decisions. He was accurate. He has his operational efficiency is good. Like, he gets the ball out of his hand quickly and where it should go in the screen game, quick game. I think that the questions about Boley are more so accuracy down the field, and then maybe just avoiding those jeopardy balls. Like, are you accounting for the safety over the top, or a linebacker that's dropped into coverage? If he can avoid those mistakes, because the turnover margin has been a huge factor in ASU success over the last 2 seasons, especially 2024 when they won the Big 12. They were first in the regular season in that category. Elsewhere at quarterback, Mikey Keene finished very strong at the end of spring ball. I feel like his experience being a starter at Fresno State and UCF, playing in many games, very valuable. He doesn't have the arm talent or the size that you would probably want to have, but he has the trust factor in terms of his ability to go out and execute an offense. And I think Jake Fetty, I've been posting about this, people have probably seen it, but one of the most impressive freshman spring performances I've ever seen from an ASU quarterback. Jaden Daniels, a notch higher. I think I remember Jaden Daniels didn't have a single interception in 11-on-11 in his first 14 spring ball practices. It was literally his last throw of the spring game when he threw an interception, and that was in a situation where he had to kind of like go for it. So
Yeah.
that was incredible. I don't know that anybody's going to ever beat that. And we all know Jade Daniels became Heisman Trophy winner, number 2.
Yeah, that was a little bit of foreshadowing there.
Rookie of the year in the NFL, right? So, but we're talking about a very high level talent in Jake Fetty. In fact, he reminds me quite a lot of Sam Levitt in terms of the size and athletic dynamic ability, like how twitchy that he is, his pocket escapes, his ability to throw off platform. There's just a lot. Like he can go get a first down with his feet in a way that the other quarterbacks really are not able to do on this team. And so his upside is high. Is he going to challenge Cutter Boley this year? I wouldn't rule it out. I'm not ruling it out. I just think it's probably not likely to happen that he ends up becoming the starter at the beginning of the season. And then Cam Dyer, I feel like he had a very good final scrimmage, and overall, probably a little bit better than I had expected as a quarterback. Like he can play Division I quarterback. It's a tough task at ASU when you got the Jake Fetty and Cutter Boley, as I've said there, but he is in the competition, and I'm interested to see how that unfolds. Wide receiver, they needed the guys to be what they thought that they were, and they are. As you correctly said there, Miller, he was my MVP of the spring game or the spring scrimmage that ended spring camp. He had 2 touchdowns, both on fades. Then he had a third down game-sealing reception in traffic that iced it with a minute left for his team that won the game. Reed Harris was great. I don't use that word lightly. He looked great to me in the spring. Very rare, 6'5", tremendous catch radius. He's got a lot of I would say both of these guys have first-round draft potential, right? Omarion Miller, he's a senior. Is he going to be able to extract enough of that right now to, in the next 7-8 months to be able to achieve that? That's maybe a tall ask, but that's his upside. And Reed Harris, he's a junior. I think he also, if not next year, the year after, I would say for sure, he also is somebody that could be a first-round guy. So, and Raiden Vinesbright should not be overlooked. This is a guy who had over 20 catches as a true freshman at Washington last year. He got a little banged up in the second half of spring ball. Nothing to worry about. But, I mean, he's a little bit smoother and a little bit more athletic and a little bit more skilled than I was expecting that he would be. A little bit bigger maybe even. So there's a lot. I mean, even he, I think, has the ability to be an NFL draft pick as a wide receiver. So this is a very talented group. And then you of course, still have Jalen Moss, who had a very good spring. I feel like he is settling in a way that didn't happen last year for him. Jaron Hamilton's a deep ball threat, big play potential. He is somebody that's dangerous with the other players because of the way that screws with defenses and what they're able to do. Derek Eusebio was out with a foot injury for all of spring ball, but he'll be back, and that's a very good 5th or 6th wide receiver at worst, right? So, and then tight end, you mentioned the Kamari Anderson injury. That's rough because he had a very good spring. I thought more balls were thrown to the tight ends, but also I saw a little bit of an evolution in the physicality of these guys. AJ Ia seems to be trending in a positive direction, and Anthony Miller, who's a phenomenal looking football player, 6'6" and 265, and got like a 7-foot wingspan, and he runs well. I mean, he was at Tulane where they won 10 games last year. So I think that group should be solid as long as Anderson is back and healthy by the start of the season. Running back, as you said, put a bunch of names in a hat, shake up the hat, pull the names out, and that's as likely as any ability to actually predict what's going to happen in this group. Kyson Brown, very good scrimmage to end camp. Felt like, he was the starter last year and they trust him and he's reliable and he can catch the ball out of the backfield. There's a lot to like about him. The guys who are new that really, really impressed me are Marquise Gillis. We've talked about him in the past and written about him, of course, and he's got a bigger, more physical style while still having that dynamic movement skills. Like, he looks like an NFL upside running back to me. And so does Carde Mack, a freshman. In fact, one of 4 freshmen who scream NFL potential to me. It would be Carde Mack. Already talked about Jake Fetty. Julian Hugo is a defensive end who's one of the best defensive ends, if not the best looking defensive end that I've seen as a freshman in 2 decades at ASU, very long time. And Daquan Dunn is a corner who is probably the most underrated guy in ASU signing class. I think he was like their 8th or 9th ranked high school edition, but he looks really good too. But that's a little aside for people. But I think we didn't even talk about Jason Brown and Man Robinson. Man Robinson had 2 great Saturday scrimmages in a row, and Jason Brown looked good. This is a guy who had 130 yards or whatever it was against Duke in the Sun Bowl. So I don't know, man. Like, the running back.
Just pick the name out of the hat, dude. Just pick the name out of the hat.
Oh, no, but really though, it's like it is so close between these guys. Didn't even mention like David Avett from Villanova, who got banged up in the second half of spring, but looked better than I maybe expected early. And Grayson Rigdon, who sprained his knee, and he actually looks good. They call him Baby Scat. So it's crazy. I mean, this is
guys.
I mean, they're both white, so like that's the Baby Scat probably, if we're being honest. But I do think though that Rigdon has very good contact balance, which was Cam Scadaboo's best attribute. So there's that element of it. But I think the bottom line is they should be pretty good at the running back position, and you better play your ass off. Otherwise, you're not going to be out there.
Yeah, and Chris, a lot of in-depth analysis there. And you know who's got a block for those backs? The offensive line. And ASU's offensive line lost a lot of guys. Lost Maxi Honachor to the draft, who we'll talk about extensively in our draft segment of this episode, but also losing key guys like Ben Coleman, Josh Atkins. It was a rebuilding offseason for the offensive line. But how do you feel like that unit has looked so far throughout spring?
Better than I thought. And I think the main reason for that is because Tana Alo-Tupuola, who is their center addition from Georgia Tech, where they were one of the top rushing offenses in the country, Haynes King, the dual threat ability, and their great ACC season. Tupuola is very, very impressive. I would say it's reasonable to expect a level of play that would be equivalent, at least, with Leif Fautanu, who was 2 years ago ASU starting center, an all-conference caliber player who just was instrumental in the team's offensive success in the Big 12 championship season. There's just the operation, the snapping, the understanding blitz protections, the ability to get everybody in sync with their pass pro, and his ability to work well with the guys next to him in the run game. All of it looks good with him. And then they added Luke Baklenko, who's from Oklahoma, where he was the top backup, but he had started two seasons at Stanford before that. And he's a pretty athletic guy at roughly 6'5" to 6'6", over 300 pounds. So I think he has a very good chance to start at right tackle. They have Champ Westbrooks and Jalen Clem coming back. They both had very good spring. Westbrooks is an athletic guy who's added a lot of size and strength, and he's getting more skilled, and his feel is really coming along. I think he was taken under the wing of Maxi Honachor a lot, like in the last couple of years. And I think that Westbrook's is now ready to be a starter at this level. And then they Jalen Clem, he had a major incident, medical incident, where he basically wasn't able to play for a year, and then he came back. He needed to get bigger and stronger, and now he looks like the best that he's been in. He's still going to have to hold up physically and not get knocked back in the pass pro, but I think he also ready to start. These guys, they started and played well against Duke in the Sun Bowl again, and then they have Jermaine Mitchell, who missed the beginning of spring ball. The guy's built like a redwood tree. I mean, he's every bit of 6'8" and over 300 pounds. And so he's got a lot of potential as another tackle. And then at guard, Mekhi Stewart, I raved about him a year ago. I said he was the freshman that was impressed me the most. And then he ended up being a starter in the second half of the season. And now I think he's looking like an NFL prospect in the making. They have Wade Helton, who started a bunch last year because of the injuries with Ben Coleman and others, including at center. He would be the most likely center if it's not Tana Alotupuola. I feel like more likely that we might see Wade Helton at guard. So it could be Mekhi Stewart, Wade Helton, Tupuola, and then I would say Baklenko, maybe Westbrooks, right? With Clem as a top guy. And Rob Lapuaho and Lenny Lapuaho, who are, I think, cousins. They're also versatile inside-outside tackle guard options that are pretty impressive. So we've talked about Sanda Tuitele and the job that he's done as an offensive line coach, developing these guys, recruiting them. And in year 4, this is remarkably impressive looking group for the departures that we've talked about.
And Chris, flipping over to the defensive side of the ball, it felt like this time last year, going from 24 to 25, it felt like the theme on defense was returning. Guys that were familiar faces for Sun Devil fans, running it back one last time, getting the gang back together. This year, completely different vibe. Feels like all those guys are out the door, and then now it's just CJ Fight. That's like kind of the lone man standing. I mean, ASU loses 2 all-conference linebackers, 3 starting defensive linemen, Keith Abney, Xavier Alford, Miles Rouser, a bunch of staple guys in the secondary. Let's start off on the front 6. CJ Fight was limited in spring, dealing with a nagging injury that he'll be fine from. There were also impact transfers, and like you mentioned a little bit earlier in this podcast, one specific big impact freshman. What did you make of how the front 6 has looked so far?
Again, sounding like a broken record here, but better than I expected. As you said, Fight had his knee cleaned up in December, so he's coming back from that. By the end of spring ball, he was doing a lot of one-on-ones, and he was doing indie periods, so he's fine. But they didn't have him. They didn't have Zach Swanson out there. He's coming back from an injury, and then Michael Gardner, who tore his Achilles last summer. He wasn't out there for the first 3 weeks. And even with that being the case, I'm looking at their D tackles and I'm like, gosh, they have players like Blazin Lona Wong he's like one of the oldest, longest tenured players on ASU's roster. He looked good. And Rashad McKenzie, Washington State transfer, who didn't really get a chance to show what he could do last year. He looked good. They added 2 junior college defensive tackles, who I was also pretty impressed by, Hiram Bayono and Jeffrey Manns. And so when you get, and then by the end of spring, Mike Gardner came back. He had 2 tipped passes, one of which was intercepted in the final scrimmage, and he was like playing in the backfield, and he showed great range. He is healthy and ready to go. Very, very impressed with him. And so I think between Fight and Michael Gardner and then Zach Swanson, they have a very good trio. And then you got all these other guys that I mentioned as other candidates to play a lot. I've almost never seen ASU be this deep at defensive tackle when healthy. And then defensive end, right? They lost They're three of their top four players. Clayton Smith got a 6th year of eligibility. That's a big deal. He tinkered on offense in the beginning, but he was on defense by the end of spring. That's where he's going to get most of his reps. The two of the most impressive newcomers that they have are at defensive end. Jalen Thompson from Michigan State, certainly one of the best players that they have on defense. And then Omarion Miller is, Emarion Winston is the other end from Baylor, who was very impressive. So those two guys, plus Clayton Smith, plus the Roman Petrie's back as a senior, and he had a bunch of good practices, especially at the very end of it. And then Julian Hugo, one of the best looking freshmen I've seen in a long time. And then they have these sub-package pass rushers that can come in, roll in off the bench. Albert Smith looked good in practice last year. Didn't really, translate it to the field quite as well as I thought that he might be capable of doing. And then they have Josh Shanklin, who he was a sack master in junior college who adjusted last year, got his feet wet. And then at linebacker, they added the number one tackler in FBS last year, Owen Long from Colorado State. Very similar defensive scheme there that they run at ASU. Seamless transition. Felt like he almost had a honing device in the ball because he was always around the football. It was pretty impressive. And Zyrus Fiaseu got a 6th year of eligibility after a foot injury last year. And he played with an edge and a real sense of purpose about him. I think he's ready to be a starter. Martell Hughes, probably as much potential as any of them on the roster. He's long, lanky, big framed. He was a sub-package guy a couple of years ago. Then he became a base down player. And he's looking pretty good. And then they have a few other guys behind them who also I think are increasingly closer to being able to play with a solid impact, including Prairie Young Black Goat, one of the best names in college football. He plays with an edge and physicality. He's probably their best former walk-on, or at least on defense, I would say. So all in all, like better than you would think for a team that lost all of the talent that we all know departed.
And Chris, lastly, with the secondary, like we talked about, you're losing Keith Abney, Savion Alfer, Miles Rouser, all of these different guys. It felt like at ASU's Pro Day, that secondary group was like the biggest group out there in terms of just numbers of bodies there. And Keith Abney, when he was talking at the NFL Combine, he said that he thinks Rodney Bimage is up next. So that's a big headline returner for ASU. But how has the secondary as a whole looked? And shoot me if you're going to say it's looked better than you expected.
Hey, look, I actually kind of like the guys that they added via transfer. Mm-hmm. So I kind of did expect, like, Lyric Rawls coming in from Kansas. He had 56 or so solo tackles last year, the most on Kansas's team. And I watched him play a lot, and I was like, this is exactly what ASU could use at that free safety position, playing in the post there. Good coverage ability, good tackling in space. I think he's really solid. And then I also liked Ashton Stamps from LSU. He started for 2 years at corner at LSU when he was younger. Last year, he ended up being a top backup. Everybody knows at LSU, they have tremendous talent and depth at their quarterback position. In 2024, I think he was first or second in passes defended in the SEC. So, okay, maybe that means that they're throwing the ball at him a decent amount, but it also means he's making a lot of plays. And that's hard. That's hard to do in that conference. So I think bottom line here is Rodney Bimage. I've talked about him as one of the best young talents on the roster. I think he's an NFL draft guy. He's ready to showcase what he can do at one corner spot. You got Ashton Stamps at the other corner spot. They have a bunch of dudes battling for that 3 spot. I would say they have Nigel Pringle from Arkansas has looked good. Caleb Chester from Texas has looked pretty good. Joseph Smith started in the Sun Bowl as a freshman when they had guys that were out, Abney and Jamin Robinson, who transferred to Wisconsin. And Then I mentioned Daquan Dunn earlier as a freshman. I think this is going to sound bold, but I think he has as much NFL draft upside as any of the corners that have come through ASU under Dillingham, including Keith Abney, who's like a second or third round guy. So
that's high praise.
Yeah. So, and then Josiah McGrew was a starter at FIU as a freshman safety, and he's looked pretty good. So there's potential maybe for McGrew to play free safety, bumping Lyric Rawls to strong safety, boundary safety. Boogie Wilson, people remember, he filled in admirably for Alford last year at free safety. He's probably going to end up playing the nickel position where Breedlove was last year, who departed. And Boogie Wilson had a shoulder that everybody saw kept popping out during the season. He had a labrum surgery, so he wasn't in contact in spring ball, but he should be fine. So I am curious to see what's going to happen at nickel, where you got to be able to cover in space, and you got to play zone, and you got to hang in there in the screen game, in the run game, in the alley, and get off blocks. There's a lot of things you got to be able to do there. It's as difficult a position as there is, I would say, on the defense. Montana Warren's another option there. He could also bump over and play a boundary safety. So look, I think the secondary, it's still going to be a question of whether they can perform at the all conference level across that group. And ultimately, these guys are going to have to be very assignment sound and execute, the scheme. But the talent is there. Dillingham said the talent is there, and I would co-sign that wholeheartedly.
And Chris, lastly, we'll keep this one brief because we have so much more to get to in this episode. But how have the special teams been looking?
Oh, they had a chance to be better. ASU was second worst team in net punting average last year. Catastrophically bad, to be honest. In that category, Canyon Floyd had a quad injury, and ASU had added another punter late from Australia who was not capable of playing at this level. But they added Nick McClarty from Ohio State. This guy is 6'7", 255 pounds. So you would expect him to have a big leg, and he does. He's going to have to get his operational quickness a little bit more dialed in to where he can still get the drop and the contact on the ball. That's the same in an 11-on-11 situation as he is when he's just by himself out there. But I think he's got a lot of potential. And then Carson Smith was the kicker of the year in his conference, playing for Austin P, which is an FCS school last year. Very, very accurate. I thought he was extremely impressive in the spring. And the leg strength is pretty good too. In fact, he had a 57-yarder in the final scrimmage bounce off the crossbar. So he has range up to the maybe high 50s, as long as the wind's not working against him in Mount America Stadium. And they need to get a lot better on special teams.
Well, Chris, we'll have so much more coming up in a little bit. We'll talk about how Randy Bennett's been cooking in the transfer portal for ASU men's basketball. We'll talk about the NFL draft guys that we've kind of been alluding to, all that and much more coming up after a quick word from our presenting sponsors over at Jones Auto Centers.
For over 60 years, the Glenn Jones name has been recognized for integrity and honesty.
And the Jones Auto Centers in Wickenburg.
Jones Ford Verde Valley.
Take a nice country drive out the Buckeyes.
When you're talking about Arizona's best, you're talking about the Jones Auto Group. It's quick, fast, strong.
I want to invite you to visit our new facility in Casa Grande and enjoy our country-style way of doing business. We're the Joneses.
Welcome back into the Sun Devil Source podcast presented by our good friends over at Jones Auto Centers. Wherever you're watching or listening to this podcast, be sure to check out the description underneath because you can contact Parker Jones directly through phone or email if you're interested in buying a new or used vehicle from one of Jones Auto Centers' many dealerships around the valley. Parker Jones and Jones Ford Verde Valley have been huge supporters of ASU's NIL efforts over the past several years, so we're proud to have them as our presenting sponsors of our podcasts and post-game shows, and that gives you Sun Devil fans another great reason to make them your go-to if you live in the valley and need a new or used vehicle. All right, Chris, let's talk NFL draft. As we're recording this, it's a Wednesday night. The draft will be tomorrow on Thursday night, day 1, and then after that, we'll have days 2 and 3. There could be some history made for the Sun Devils here. ASU hasn't had a first rounder since Brandon Ayuk back in 2020 when he was the 25th overall pick to the 49ers as a wide receiver. From everything that's being floated around in the media space, it seems like Jordan Tyson's going to go higher than that. So that's a start. But you keep it going. ASU hasn't had a top 10 pick since Terrell Suggs back in 2003. That might be the territory that ASU could be getting into here with Jordan Tyson. But there's even more. ASU hasn't had 2 first-round picks in the same draft since back in 2001 with Adam Archuleta and Todd Heap. There's a chance that Maxi Honachor could go day 1, in which case him and presumably Jordan Tyson would then create a scenario like that for ASU. So there's a lot that could be happening. Let's break it all down. And starting off with Jordan Tyson, it feels like, honestly, I mean, obviously, we're ASU reporters, so we probably see a lot of ASU-based stuff on our social media feeds. But even outside of that, it feels like out of all the top prospects in this draft, Jordan Tyson might have been the most talked about guy over the last few weeks. Everybody has an opinion on Jordan Tyson. Is he injury prone? You have the knee injury back at Colorado. You have the collarbone injury in 2024, and then you have the hamstring issues from last season. Is he tough? A lot of people questioning his toughness kind of in relation to the injury questions. And then Daniel Jeremiah, one of the most respected national draft experts, came out yesterday as of when we were recording this and was critical of Jordan Tyson in his own podcast episode, saying he doesn't think Tyson can do well getting off of press coverage. He has questions about his contested catch ability, his yards after catch ability. I'm going to be honest, I don't particularly agree with those last few sentiments. Do you?
Not really, especially because he used the word struggles, right?
Which is a really strong word.
I think you need to have relative perspective here. Okay, we're talking about somebody that almost every team would draft in the first round somewhere, right? Like if you just happen to have an extra pick late in the draft and Jordan Tyson was available, he'd be like, yeah, let's get that guy, right? So I think people generally agree that he is an extremely twitchy, explosive, dynamic player, right? The questions are like his play strength, which is kind of weird also because he had 27 reps at the NFL Combine, which was like the most or tied for the most among receivers. So he's like very strong, like in that respect, right? ASU moved him a lot into the slot, try to create mismatches. You're not going to be against press coverage. And he feasted there, but they do that in the NFL too. The part that I can maybe kind of understand is he's not necessarily great at getting off of press coverage, like for a first round prospect, right? But his ability at the catch point, like in contact catches, no. This is a guy who has a tremendous ability to elevate and go get the ball. He's made the play is slow at the ball's arrival. He has a phenomenal ability to adjust to the ball in flight to be able to go get it, and he makes difficult catches look ordinary.
There are so many clips that me and Gabby have posted for you over the last year that showcase that.
Yeah. So, and then some people have said, well, he's a little bit too willing to go out of bounds rather than fight for some extra yards. I think that's a little bit overly critical, right? Like, you don't want your star players to risk injury for an extra yard or two when that could involve a big collision and the cumulative effect of that, right? Now, some people look at that and go, the toughness question, right? Like how, but I don't really see that. I don't really see those things. Is he the best receiver in this draft? I don't know. Like, the Ohio State kid is super talented and really good. name is escaping me right now. But
Tate.
Correct. But nevertheless, right? Like, this is somebody who should be in the top half of the first round of the NFL draft. And as you said there earlier, Brandon Ayuk is the only first rounder that we've seen at ASU as a receiver in recent years, and there hasn't been a top 10 pick in many years, going back to T. Sizzles, Terrell Suggs, and Jordan Tyson is legitimately in that conversation. And I would just say, Jacob, that I've been, covering this thing for a while, and I have not been more impressed by any wide receiver that I have covered at ASU. That includes Brandon Ayuk. N'Keal Harry was a first rounder. Ricky Pearsall went on to be a first rounder, and a bunch of other guys, right? I have not been more impressed by any of them than I have Jordan Tyson. I think Jordan Tyson, in fact, I had reservations about N'Keal Harry and maybe thought that a couple other guys were a little bit too high. I do not think Jordan Tyson is going to go too high. If he ends up being the number 5 or the number 8 pick or whatever, I'll go, oh, okay, cool. Jordan Tyson, that makes sense. Yeah. I can see that. Mm-hmm. And is he going to be a wide receiver 1 in the NFL, like a clear wide receiver 1? I'm not sure. I think eventually, probably on some team, he will be. But I feel very good that he's going to be able to be a very good wide receiver number 2 for almost any of these teams that he could possibly go to, and probably sooner than later, because he's so dynamic, he's so versatile, his movement skills are great, he has the ability to take the top off of a defense with his explosiveness, and he's somebody that you can throw it to and have a lot of reliability that he's going to make plays. So I'm now done covering Jordan Tyson, and now I am a Jordan Tyson fan because I think that he's going to be and by the way, he's also a mature, humble, grounded, hardworking guy who he's a sweetheart. Like, everybody's going to like to be around Jordan Tyson, no matter what team he ends up being on. He just checks all these boxes.
Yeah. For my 2 cents on this, the 2 things that I come back to is that for the toughness questions, I was on the field filming the game when he had that hamstring injury against Texas Tech and then laid it all out on the line in the 4th quarter on the last drive when he did not need to do that. Like, he knew he was going to go to the NFL and could have been like, nah, I'm good. I'm not risking that.
I'll tell you another story. And Dillingham alluded to this recently. Jordan Tyson split his hand open in practice on was it the Friday? It was a day or 2 before ASU played in a game. He got like 7 or 8 stitches in his hand. Then he wore a glove and he went out there and he started the game and didn't tell anybody and nobody knew about it. In your hand as a wide receiver to have 7 or 8 stitches and the ball is coming at you in a hurry, right? And you're out there making plays. He did not miss any games. So, again, I don't think that this guy has toughness flaw. I don't think he has a weakness in that respect.
Yeah, and the other thing that I wanted to mention was, like, you were talking about how people are like, oh, ASU was moving him into the slot. Like, dude, we just watched Jackson Smith and Jigba win a Super Bowl playing with that play style and looking like arguably the best wide receiver in the league. And now people are trying to say that, I don't know. A lot of the discourse with it blows my mind, but we've got to move on to.
Well, let me just say, I was talking to some people. I think that actually, like, Odell Beckham Jr. has some similar characteristics to Jordan.
I agree. I completely agree. Play style. Yeah.
The ability to find the ball in the air and to make these amazing catches, and also the twitch at the top of the route is quite similar. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think though that Beckham, he had a lot of like off-field things. There was always like lifestyle and, and
how the picture on the yacht right before the playoffs.
Yeah. Like how how much does this guy love everything that goes into making you the best football player possible versus your other pursuits? Jordan Tyson is a baller. Okay. So I think he's going to be really good.
I agree. The guy, as we talked about before we started talking about Jordan Tyson, who, assuming Jordan Tyson does go in the first round like he's projected to, could be the second first rounder for ASU, is Maxi Honachor. And Chris, he just has a ridiculous story. I know you've covered it so extensively, but Honachor didn't play high school football. He played soccer. Then he had
basketball.
1 year of JUCO football experience before ASU, comes to ASU, gets developed by Saga Tuitele and ASU's staff. All of a sudden now people are talking about how he could be a potential first round draft pick. And I know I mentioned that Jordan Tyson has been arguably the most talked about prospect. It feels like Honachor has been one of the biggest risers over the last few months. A few months ago, it didn't feel like there was a chance in the world he was going to go in round one. All of a sudden, he starts getting some buzz and some mock drafts from some big national guys. Then you've got Mike Vrabel coming out to ASU's Pro Day, getting real hands-on with him, doing the drills. That goes mega viral all over the internet. Now, all of a sudden, everybody's talking about Honachor. Do you think he could go in round one? And did you ever expect this outcome? Because I know you were high on him when ASU got him, but this is something.
Yeah, that was pretty cool seeing Vrabel working with Honachor in front of like every NFL team except for one at his pro day. Very hands-on. That was a very hands-on weekend for Mike Vrabel in Arizona, by the way. But look, hey, I'm just saying, right? So Maxi Honachor, Nigerian family, grew up playing soccer, big, right? Then he became a super giant guy. He's playing basketball, right? So as a basketball player, he's probably realizing, you know what? Like, I'm a 6'5", 6'6" dude. I'm not going to be a professional basketball player. And let me just say that I've been covering basketball recruiting for half my life, right? And I can't tell you how many times I've been in the gym and I'm looking at these 6'6" guys and I'm like, your feet are amazing. You bend and you move really well. You have a great wingspan. Your body easily can be a 300-pounder. Why aren't you playing offensive tackle where you can go make many millions of dollars versus playing some low-level Division I power forward or something, right? And Maxi Honachor made a phenomenal life and business decision to change course and move into the direction of football, coming out of the Los Angeles area, 1 year at JUCO, phenomenal developmental arc at ASU. This is a guy who is extremely strong, has a 6'10" or 6'11" wingspan. He has major impact in the run game for a tackle. I mean, he has the ability to move bodies, right? There's a little bit of a question about how well he's going to handle the speed rushers in the NFL. That's a little bit of a question that could potentially kick him down to the second. But he didn't give up sacks at ASU. I mean, he had very good coverage ability. He mirrored, he pushed rush ends, past the zone. There's a lot of things that he did that were just super, super impressive. And, I can't really say enough about like how rapidly and how impressively that this guy developed over the last several years at ASU.
All right, Chris, rapid fire drafts in under 24 hours. If you had to put your money on it right now, do you think he goes in round one or do you think it's round two?
The way that the Patriots seem to have that need, and then the Vrabel was, he was just so focused on seeing whether or not he was that guy. It sort of leads me to think, I think they picked 31st or something like that in round one. Mm-hmm. That's my hunch, but
that's what I believe too.
Yeah, he easily could slide into the second, and there's nothing wrong with that. The dude is he's gonna go make a ton of money, and his whole family is gonna be better off for it, and it's gonna be amazing.
Yeah, and Chris, the guy who's probably going to be ASU's third selected player is lockdown cornerback Keith Abney. He's projected to have a little bit of a wider range of outcomes. People could see him going early round 2. They could also see him slipping into the back ends of rounds 3 and 4. But he should hear his name get called in the draft. He showed out in his last season at ASU, but there also are some question marks surrounding him as a prospect, specifically for the NFL compared to what he produced in college. What are the strengths and kind of drawbacks for him?
A lot of intangible strengths. Tremendous intestinal fortitude. This is somebody who's just driven and works, and he's smart and savvy, and he's going to be like, you're never going to have any questions about, is he going to know everything in our scheme? Is he going to know the game plan? Is he going to know the opponent's players and their tendencies? Are we going to be able to move him around? Are we going to be able to use him at nickel or outside corner? He's going to be able to do all of that, and just one of the most reliable people in that respect. He has a background as a track skater, an inline skater that helped him. He bends, and he's got great strength in his lower half. Right away, I'm like, this guy's ability to bend and pedal and move was just different. Even when he was a freshman, he wasn't even a top 900 prospect in his class. Phenomenal job by ASU in their very first recruiting class under Dillingham to bring him into the fold. The questions are, the NFL is a size and speed league, right? And he is just a hair under 5'10". That's on the short side for an NFL corner, or even a nickel, a little bit short. And he's not he's 190-ish pounds. I mean, he's actually, strong, and he's reasonable, well put together, but he's not big by any stretch. And then also, he doesn't have like that blazing speed. He's got good speed, but he probably is an average speed guy for NFL defensive backs, right? So the question is then, okay, is he in man coverage? How well is he going to hold up in man coverage, especially if you have to move him outside? Is he going to be narrowly limited to being a nickel at the next level? I think that's a question. Should a nickel get picked that high? It's very hard to be a nickel and get picked in the first round at 5'10" or a tad under. So there's I don't think he's going to go with the first. My guess is he's probably like a third rounder. And I think if he's gone by the end of day 2, that's a very good result for Keith Abney. Is there potential for him to slip into the 4th round? Yeah, I think there is. But he's done everything that he could do. Like he is a level 10 worker. Everything is very intentional, and he has a great spirit about him. And again, like, these are just high character kids that ASU has in this class. That the cornerstone of Dillingham's culture is the character of the players. It's not like a lot of places where it's like great talent, but on like the character. And Abney, Ihanichor, Jordan Tyson, and Keyshawn Elliott, who we're going to talk about in a minute, they all are really impressive in that respect.
So yeah, you toss to it. Let's talk about Keyshawn Elliott. He seems like the 4th and final guy who likely you can pencil in as getting selected at some point in the NFL draft, coming from ASU at 233 pounds. He had an impressive 40 time running in the 4.5s. And it was funny because when me and a couple other reporters were grabbing him after ASU's pro day, he mentioned how he was annoyed that people were acting like he was going to run slow in the 40, because he was like, bro, I ran track in high school. Like, these people didn't do their research. I thought that was pretty funny. And then for him as a player, he was one of the top tacklers in the Big 12 over the last 2 years. Very impressive. Also, just in terms of football IQ and intangibles and just being a leader at ASU over these last 2 seasons as well. What do you make of him as an NFL draft prospect?
I want him on my team. I mean, over 2 years ago, Kenny Dillingham said, if there was one player who's going to be in the building before the coaches, it's Keyshawn Elliott. The dude was regularly in ASU's facility at 5 a.m. like routine. Like he's almost he's almost a machine in terms of the reliability of his habits, like all the way down to like the same meals at the same times, the same workout scheduling, the same everything. Like he does not deviate. Like he's a Terminator, and he is put on the field to annihilate running backs. Like this is what his whole purpose is. Like is he runs like he doesn't maybe look like he runs a 4.5 40. He might be a little bit, not as loose hipped as you might like. As a linebacker, may not be able to, flip his hips and cover and do some of those things. I mean, he's I think he's a Mike backer at the next level. He can play, he's a strong side guy probably. But bottom line is that he is very, very savvy, and he is a consummate professional even before getting to the NFL level. Like he already has all of those attributes, and he can be a special teams guy. He'll do whatever you ask of him. He'll do it at 100% effort and intensity and focus and dedication. That's exactly what I'm looking for in a middle round linebacker like a Keyshawn Elliott.
And Chris, last thing before we get into the men's hoops portal madness, as for the best of the rest guys coming out of ASU, there are a number of guys who could definitely be in the fold to maybe get a surprise shout in the 6th or 7th round of the draft, and definitely get a camp invite or become an undrafted free agent or something along those lines. I mean, just off the top of my head, Jordan Crook, Shimon Mateer, Xavier Alford, Miles Rouser, maybe Jeff Sims, maybe Malik McClain, Ben Coleman, other guys that I'm not even naming right now. Out of that best of the rest group, who are the guys that you think have the best chance to genuinely stick and make an impact in the league?
I'm never going to bet against Xavier Alford. Very unfortunate that he had the back injury that cost him last season. And I thought maybe he'd come back for another year in college and remind people just how good that he actually is. Doesn't have great size, doesn't have like the elite speed, the things that maybe could overcome the missing the season due to a back injury before you get drafted, right? So that's why he's not going to get drafted, I'm guessing. But he's going to be better than a lot of other safeties. Like he's just going to be he's going to be better than guys that get drafted. Like there's going to be guys who get drafted that are taller and rangier, and they're prettier, and their movement skills. They're not going to. A lot of those guys are not going to be better players though. So Alford for sure. I think end of the day, Jordan Crook, he fits the will linebacker role that a lot of teams are gonna have. Doesn't run quite as well as you might like, but he makes up for it with his instinctiveness. He's got great reaction. He's physical for being a little undersized guy, right? So there's. He's a guy that, if he ended up on a practice squad somewhere, that wouldn't surprise me. And Shimon Mateer, tight ends, they take longer developing arcs. He's got to get stronger. He wasn't strong enough in the weight room, I would say. That's a factor. So he can become a more physically imposing presence as a blocker and special teams player, but there's attributes. Like, is he worse than some of the guys that have come through ASU that have gotten opportunities at the tight end position? I don't think so. So, and then Jesus Gomez, like, I think he's got plenty of leg. The NFL is like ridiculously hard to get a spot as a kicker, but I think he should be kicking somewhere. With the possibility of continuing to improve and develop and getting an opportunity down the line.
Chris, now we finally got to get to the last major topic of this episode. I mean, honestly, this topic in and of itself could have been like a whole hour episode, but we'll try and keep it brief because we're already well over an hour into your guys' time right now. ASU men's basketball, as of the time of us recording this, could change. As of the time of us recording it, per 247 Sports, has the number 8 ranked transfer portal class in the entire country.
Yeah.
That's a pretty crazy outcome, especially considering this isn't like prematurely like getting the screen grab in right before things change. Like most of the top transfers have already decided where they're going. ASU has brought in 6 new players. Let's start off with the 3 biggest fishes and the biggest fish of all of them. Paulius Morauskas coming over, rejoining Randy Bennett. He was with Randy Bennett at St. Mary's. He was, at the time he committed, the number 9 player in the portal per 247 Sports. Now he's dropped down to number 10, a 6'8" power forward. He is going to be the centerpiece of the Sun Devil roster next season. Chris, how was ASU able to get that deal done, bringing in a player of his caliber, and what does it mean to the program?
Crucial. The Randy Bennett needed a signature player like that in the front court, and he's getting somebody that already fully understands the culture, the scheme, everything about what they're trying to do programmatically. He's going to be a senior. He played a lot of college basketball. He was a freshman in Arizona, moved on to St. Mary's for 2 seasons. West Coast Conference first team player, averaged 18.4 points, 7.5 rebounds, very good passer and facilitator for 6'8" and 235 pounds, puts the ball on the floor. He's crafty. You can initiate your offense through him. He's going to draw a lot of double teams with what he does with the ball in his hands. He can shoot it out to the 3-point line. In fact, he's shot 33% from 3 this past season. And St. Mary's always is very tough, physical, competitive on the defensive side. He could probably, move that up a notch, but he is a top 10 transfer in the country by 247 Sports. And we're talking about guys who typically would be getting a few $1 million a year. Now, he gave some indications via his Instagram when he talked about his decision, where he referenced, money isn't everything, being with people that are, the people that are attached to and that mean a lot to you and that have the ability to impact your life. He said that he prioritized that. To me, I took that to mean that maybe ASU got a little bit of a discount. I don't know how much, or even if that is indeed factual. Bottom line, though, is he is a guy who can play at a high level in the Big 12 coming in from St. Mary's at that anchor front court position that ASU needed.
And Chris, Randy Bennett didn't just get one big fish coming with him from St. Mary's. He got another one in Dylan Shaw, who was the number 17 overall small forward in the transfer portal. Seems to be ASU's second biggest guy that they've gotten so far. What does he bring to the table?
3-and-D, high end 3-and-D. I mean, 6'7", rebounds well for the position. Shot like around 42% from 3. That's very good for a freshman. He had 14 games in which he had 2 or more made threes, and a few games when he just went off for like 5 or 6 threes. He's a guy that you can scheme for, right? You get him on staggers, you get him coming off pin downs. There's like a guy like Randy Bennett, he creatively can get a lot of shots for a guy like Dylan Shaw. And 6'7", small forward, great size. Like, there's a lot to like about his game. I think he's going to continue to get better. He's going to get stronger. He's going to become more adept at putting the ball on the floor, pull-up game, facilitating from the wing. There's other things that I think are still there. He was a top 100 recruit coming out of high school. So there's, I think, plenty more to extract from him over the next couple of years.
And Chris, probably the third biggest guy that ASU was able to land was Joel Foxwell. He was on the WCC all freshman team, and he led the conference in assists. Play style wise, a little bit similar to a fan favorite by the name of Mo Odom, who just departed from the program. What does Foxwell bring to the table?
Yeah, I'd say he's probably a little bit. He might be a little bit stronger than Odom, especially at that same age, like for being a freshman. 6'1", 180 or so. I think his passing ability out of ball screens is really great. He has a creative feel that's much higher than your typical freshman point guard. Coming in from Australia, he was a top 5 Australian recruit in the 2025 class. 15.5 points, 6.5 assists. Like you said, the first in the West Coast Conference. Portland wasn't as good as some of these other teams. That's a difficult league, but he was the main player that kept them competitive in a lot of these bigger games. And I think it's reasonably assured that he's going to be ASU's starting point guard, and I think a pretty good one. I mean, he's a 4-star recruit. He's somebody that had a high transfer grade. In fact, his .910 transfer grade is equivalent to the highest of any ASU transfer in this portal era. So like the last 5 or so years, other than Morauskas. So the number 20 point guard in the transfer portal, and that's a pretty good get.
Yeah, and Chris, just to round out everything else that has been going on with this team, J-Rob Croy, he was a 4-star combo guard who flipped his commitment from St. Mary's to ASU to follow in Randy Bennett's footsteps. You actually did an interview with him on one of our podcast episodes last week, so you guys can check that out if you want to get to know Croy. But beyond him, ASU, like I mentioned earlier, 6 new guys coming in. Also, Bryce Ford and VJ Wallace are the 2 returners from last season. Ford made it clear pretty early on in this offseason process. He just took to his IG story and said, guys, I'm coming back. Then VJ Wallace, it was kind of in limbo for a little bit. He was the guy who, if you guys remember, dealt with injury last season, didn't actually get to play at all during the regular season, but was potentially going to start for Bobby Hurley's roster last year. Both of them coming back. What's next for this squad and for Randy Bennett?
Yeah, Bryce Ford actually battled an injury in the hip groin sort of area, and he needed to have surgery recently, and that's going to be like a several months long recovery. It could even potentially threaten his season or the beginning of the season. We'll see. VJ Wallace coming back from the dislocated ankle that he suffered in an exhibition game against Texas A&M, but he's an athletic, lanky guy. So the 2 guys that are returning, they have J-Rob Croy, who's going to be a freshman coming in. His dad, Rick Croy, was a coach at Cal Baptist. He left that school where he led them to an NCAA tournament for winning their conference to work for Randy Bennett as associate head coach. And then they have 6 transfer additions, the 3 that we talked about, but also Emmanuel Innocenti. He started at small forward for Gonzaga, a defensive guy, who can make shots and play like a role as like their 4th or 5th starter. They also added Marcus Vaughns. He's an Australian who was a mid-year enrollee in January at LSU. Didn't play there. It was a redshirt year, so 4 years of eligibility. He's a 6'8" combo forward, in and out forward. And they added Nate Garcia, who's a 7-footer who played for Cal Baptist. He was their backup center, played a fair amount of reps, and he's a guy was a freshman, so he's still got plenty of development, as most 7-foot bigs do when they're that young, 19 years old or whatever he is now. So they have 6 transfers. J-Rob Croy, that's 7. They have 2 returning players that we mentioned. That's 9. Basketball rosters can have up to 15 scholarships. Some schools only give more like 13, 12, 13. You're not really going to be paying. You're trying to maximize the economics of your roster. You're probably not going to be paying that much money to more than about 9 or 10 guys. So I think they'll they'll probably add a few more international players or transfers to try to round them out at some of these positions. I mean, Randy Bennett loves to have a lot of size in the front court. So my guess is they'll probably add another kid who's a 6'10" plus guy who can start or play a lot right away as a power forward or center. Maybe one more
front court player, and then they'll probably add a couple more guards at a minimum, and we'll see what that looks like over the coming days and maybe a couple weeks.
Yeah, as that all continues to develop, we'll have all the coverage for that on sundevilsource.com, all of our various different social media platforms as well. But that'll just about do it for this episode of the podcast, Chris. We packed a lot of information about a bunch of different topics into the last 75 minutes. But if you left this episode feeling like, man, I just wanted to know a little more about how the position battles were going in ASU spring football practices, we weren't able to expand on that topic as much as we definitely could have here in this episode. We will have a members only podcast episode from Chris and Gabby coming up in just about a day or two here, like I mentioned earlier in this episode, that'll go even more in detail, probably 75 minutes on its own of just spring football breakdowns, talking about how everything was going on the practice fields over this last month. So if you're watching this and you're subscribed to our YouTube, but you're not tapped in on sundevilsource.com, subscribe to our board. I recommend you get in on that. Our coverage is 24/7 over there, getting everything up to date with ASU football and everything that you guys need to know. Chris is very active over there with in-depth breakdowns. You guys should check it out. But that'll do it for this episode. We appreciate everyone who stuck around this long, tapped in with all of our insight, and we hope you all have a good one.